All right, everybody, and thank you for joining us. Now, I hope I am actually off mute, so can everybody confirm for me? This is Justin Miller, and we are here at Wowza, and today we are going to do another Wowza support webinar, Wowza Streaming Engine, our most popular modules. Today, we're going to be discussing how to add enhanced stream functionality and control into Wowza Streaming Engine using our most popular modules, how to quickly access developer support resources and best practices. Now, this is for creating and managing your Wowza Streaming Engine live streaming application, as well as including live streaming workflow overview. We're going to discuss how to rely on your professional services team for expert guidance, integrating Wowza technology and optimizing your architecture to build customized solutions, no matter what you're trying to build. Now, before we're going to get started here, I also just want to toss up a poll. So I'm just going to launch this poll right now. I hope everybody can see it. Please do feel free to answer the questions on the poll. It is much appreciated for us. Okay, and moving forward here. So we're going to start with our brief overview. As you just heard, we're going to talk about the log4j2 update, and then we're going to be covering our most popular modules. These modules are module AV Mix, control modules, the live stream record, auto record, stream publisher, and HLS stream targets. Now, we will be answering questions at any time during this webinar. We do have a Q&A session at the end, and we will be talking about Wowza support and professional services options, but we will be answering questions at any time. So please feel free to type your questions into the Q&A window. In fact, just to make sure that you feel the Q&A window is working, if you just want to tell us where you're from in the Q&A window, that would be most helpful. I always like to know that people can hear me, because nobody told me whether my mic was working or not. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate that. Okay, so jumping ahead, we have our panelists. Mac Hill, the Director of Global Service and Delivery. I'm going to say the and there. Is if there's no and, I'm sorry, Mac. I didn't mean to do that.
It sounds great. I'm multitasking on that one, so all good.
Oh, all right. We have Roger Littleton, Senior Solutions Engineer. Roger, how's it going?
It's going good. So
I'm sorry, I
been
pronounced your last name wrong, didn't I? I did that.
That's fine. That's fine.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's going well. It's going well.
Glad to hear it. And finally, we have Tim Doherty. Tim has been in many of the videos that you may have seen online with me. Tim, so glad you're here. He is the Director of Sales Engineering. Tim.
Thank you, Justin. It's time for Wowza Corner. Let's enjoy this webinar.
I would love to do a regular weekly Wowza Corner video with you. And if other people want to see that, please do let us know in the Q&A. It's always appreciated. Okay, that being said,
all right.
Hey, Mac.
Cool. Yes.
Mac, I'm feeling bad because I did state before that you had that chance to speak about log4j2. So I'm just going
to. This is a very forgiving.
I'm going to
webinar already.
Back to right here.
No, you're good. Between Tim's interruptions and my interruptions, I feel like we're on a roll.
All right.
So we are so glad that everyone is here today to see that we are human and this is life. So I do want to give a quick update on the log4j Apache log4j2 update. As many of you may or may not be aware, there were last week on the 10th, there was an initial CVE, a vulnerability exception that was logged around that Apache version, I believe, to 2.0 through 2.14 and some .x. We became aware of that. We began working on that over the weekend. We all found out about it at the same time. Over the weekend, we were working on that. We released some information Friday afternoon, believing that the 2.15, as mentioned by Apache, would take care of the issue. We later found that as we were about to roll out an updater to simplify the process for customers yesterday, that 2.15 was no longer in the safe zone, and that Apache was saying in order to mitigate this, we would have to go to the .16 release. It's a lot of information. What I shared in the chat channel for everyone is that we would encourage everyone who is on Wowza version 4.8.8.01 and above to run the updater. And that link that I provided in there will take you to the known issues article. So that kind of gives you an outline and details. Also, it will take you to an article on how to install the updater. And so if you have any questions after you've done that process, please reach out to support, and my team will be happy 24/7 to answer questions to make sure that you are mitigating this issue. Okay. If there's any questions about prior versions, Roger, I know that you had some details around that. At this point, we don't believe anything to these CVEs. There's nothing that affects prior versions. So 4.8.5.05 and before are not affected by these CVEs. So, but I would encourage everyone to update as soon as possible.
Yes. So just add a little bit to that. There was, I think the second CVE did mention a vulnerability in the earlier versions of Log4j if you're using a specific appender class. We don't use that appender class that they mentioned, and we've never used it in production. So technically, we shouldn't be vulnerable on the previous versions. But then saying that, Log4j1 did have its own known issues. So our recommendation there would be to actually, if possible, update to the current version of Wowza Streaming Engine and then run the patch to update Log4j to the new version. From there, then you should be doubly protected.
Right, exactly. So thank you for that.
All right.
Excellent.
Yeah, no, definitely thank you. And I'm glad we could put that right at the beginning here, so people are definitely aware of it. It's something we want to have taken care of now as opposed to after the webinar. Well, no, probably after the webinar still. But still, let's move forward here and back to the module AV Mix module.
Yes, so AV Mix module, again, it's one of the modules that we've created as an example. There's actually one I created quite a few years ago. We had a customer that wanted to be able to take audio from a online radio station and video from IP cameras and basically provide an audio overlay for the IP cameras. So we created this module as an example to show them how to do it. And so basically, as I suggested, we've got two source video streams. One is the one video stream and an audio stream. And we can basically mix them together into an output stream. The module also allows you to change midstream. So if you want to change the audio source or the video source, you can do that as well. So again, this is, as Mac alluded to earlier on, it's one of our example modules, and all the modules in here is configured through properties in Wowza Streaming Engine. If a customer wanted to take this module and make it their own, then there is API methods in there as well to be able to dynamically set it up.
So, hey, Roger.
So Roger. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mac. Go ahead.
No, you go after you.
I had a question for Roger too.
Go ahead.
Fire away.
Yours is funnier. Go ahead.
Roger, I was just going to ask. It says you can switch between the inputs. Is that an HTTP provider, or is it like a REST API call, something like that?
It's some Java API calls that we included in the module originally, and that can be hooked up if you want to create an HTTP provider or a REST API endpoint to be able to hook those up to be able to then make requests to call them. At the moment, they're only triggered through the Java properties or through the application properties. But yeah, the APIs are there if you did want to be able to update them. And to be honest, this module was actually created back in the Flash days. And I think as part of the original configuration, we did have a Flash application that could make a request and to switch the inputs.
So thinking on a bigger level, outside of just the example, but into maybe some customization, we typically in support will see requests on how can I switch. Let's say I've got 2 or 3 cameras. Let's say I'm at I'm at a live event and I don't have an actual switcher. So let's say I don't have an OBS. Let's say I don't have a Wirecast or something on site or a vMix, right? Is if I had sources all pushing in, let's say I had 3 camera sources coming in to my server, and I have that main audio track coming in off the soundboard at a venue. Is that something that this would handle, or would that just require additional?
So it can definitely handle that. And examples for what you're talking about may be somebody's doing a presentation to a class or something like that, and they want to then switch out the video to a static a VOD file and then come back into it. But they want to keep the audio going so they can explain what's happening in the video. They can definitely do something like that with this.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
Anything else on this one?
If there's nothing else, we can move on.
Sweet.
Right. So the next modules that we're talking about, it's basically a group of 3, what we would call utility modules that we've created. The first one there, module transcoder control, as the name suggests, this basically allows you to control which incoming streams are getting transcoded. So again, taking the previous module, the AV mix module, it's actually, when that's running properly, there's three streams available. So you've got obviously your video source, your audio source, and then the output stream from that module. When you're transcoding, you probably only want that output stream to be transcoded. So if you think about it, if you don't have a control module on the transcoder, and say you're creating a transcoder template with, say, 3 or 4 renditions in it, then if you don't have this control module with that previous example, you're actually going to have 9 streams. Well, actually, you're going to have 12 streams by the time it's finished, because you can have the original 3 streams plus your 3 transcoded outputs for each one. So that's going to give you 9 transcoder outputs plus your 3 original streams. So you've got 12 streams to deal with. And at the end of the day, you probably only wanted the output stream transcoded. So that allows the module transcoder control allows you to be able to do that. The second one in the list, and the second and third ones in the list there, the packetizer control and DVR recorder control, both work a similar way. So rather than the transcoded streams, they're looking at what source streams want to actually be turned into HLS output or turned into DVR streams. Again, they use a similar workflow. They take either a stream name, a list of stream names, or stream name suffix for the inputs there, and then they can basically every time a stream starts, it's going to call those 2 modules, and it's going to see which ones of them actually need to be turned into outputs. So again, with the previous example, if we had AV mix running 3 streams, even just running on its own without transcoder, we'd be creating packetized outputs for all 3 of those streams when we probably only want the one of them done.
So this really helps manage resources on the server, doesn't it? Particularly with the transcoder. Yeah, because of all the GPU and or CPU, you can it's obviously implied. It says control on each one of these modules. So, one of the takeaways I'm seeing here is you use these modules, you're getting more control over what's happening on your Wowza server. Yeah,
correct. So the transcoder one, it can take a list. It has multiple ways of doing it. So it can take a list of stream names. It can take a regular expression. So if you've got a pattern in your stream names that you want transcoded, then you can use that. So for example, going back to the AV mix, we specify a name for the output stream. So the default for that is whatever the source stream name is _output. So in the transcoder control module, you could say star.output and anything that, or star_output, and anything that ends in output would be transcoded. And again, same with the packetizer controls. We can say we want just the we can list the transcoder output or the transcoder rendition names, and those would just be packetized.
Awesome. Now, Tim, you've been in sales engineering for a while. Probably had over tens of thousands of calls.
Oh, I don't know about that.
You're pretty talkative. Maybe it was one long call. I don't know.
Maybe.
So with these control modules, I mean, how often does this come up in your discussions, if ever?
Frequently. Folks coming in to consider Wowza Streaming Engine, particularly those who are scaling. When you're doing a workflow where maybe one stream is coming in at 720p from multiple mobile devices, but then you might have a host or somebody for an event that needs that full ABR ladder, 1080, 720, 360, and even 160, that kind of approach. Customers appreciate, Wowza users appreciate being able to not transcode particular streams. This helps simplify maybe the number of applications they're using with Wowza Streaming Engine. And it also can help keep, we're using the word control a lot here, and that's the heading. You can get more out of your server by limiting unnecessary processing. And I think with every one of these modules, that's exactly what's going on. So you can spec just the right hardware for your workflow. So that's often how I would interact with these modules, just kind of letting people know, hey, there is a way to really customize and keep a granular control on your transcoding, packetizing. And then DVR recording is particularly interesting because we don't realize it, but it's recording data to disk with every byte that comes in from an encoder. So if you're dealing with a cloud-based server that maybe only has 32 gigabytes of RAM of disk space, something like that, you really got to keep control on how much space is being used. So again, limiting the number of streams that are being recorded can be very efficient. So I see it as exactly that.
Good. Yeah, I like that it removes the whole all or nothing thought pattern. Like you have options, right? So good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Good stuff. I don't see any questions. Am I missing them, Justin? You're good? Okay.
Yep, nothing
on,
Roger.
Roger.
At this point.
Yeah. Let's see what else. What's next? Is Tim next on this next one here?
Am I talking about live stream auto record?
You are, Tim.
You are now.
You might be a Wow
question though that just came in. So Michael was asking if the source coming into Wowza matches what you'd want for an output, is there an advantage to transcoder control versus just setting pass-through?
So I think the question is basically if your source coming in is already at the right format that you want for the output, do you need to transcode it, or can you just use it as a pass-through? And the answer to that really depends. And most times you can use it as a pass-through. Cases where you probably wouldn't use it as a pass-through would be if maybe the keyframe interval isn't correct, maybe the codec isn't exactly what you want for your output. So an example of that might be if you're doing a WebRTC stream and the source coming in as a high profile with B frames, then WebRTC doesn't support B frames. So you wouldn't want to be using that as a pass-through to use for your WebRTC playback. So in that case, you would have to transcode it. But in most cases, you can use the original source coming through as your top level transcoder output as a pass-through.
I kind of read that differently. He says, thank you. Michael says, thank you. But I was reading it a little bit differently. And as far as resources on the server, is there an advantage over transcoder control saying, don't look at that stream versus passing that stream through?
Yeah. So to be honest, the transcoder control is actually saying whether we're going to start a transcoder session for that stream or not. So if you still want if you want a set of ABR streams for that source stream, then you'd still need to pass it. You still need to accept it through the transcoder control. It's not going to stop individual streams. in the actual transcoder itself, it's basically going to stop a complete stream going into. It's going to stop a transcoder session starting up. So yeah, if you're resource limited and you don't need to transcode everything, then that's where you use a control module to prevent a stream from actually being transcoded at all.
So to clarify, a pass-through would still generate a transcoder session, though?
Correct. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Good question.
Cool.
Let's talk about auto record. One thing you'll notice, even as a new Wowza Streaming Engine user, you're in Wowza Streaming Engine Manager, there's an option in the application that says record all streams. It's a little checkbox, and it does exactly that. But we are talking about the notion of having several streams going into Wowza server at one time. And we're also talking about the transcoder. So again, a huge theme in these very popular modules is control. So you can do it in the XML as well. You can do it in the manager, click record all streams, or you can rename the application live-record, or not rename, but change the application type. So there's various ways to set this up. But one issue you run into is if you are transcoding, one stream comes in, but it's creating maybe 3 or 4 renditions, depending on how you're configured. And now you're recording like 6 streams. And if you have multiple encoders connecting to Wowza, you might be recording 12 or 18 or 36 streams. So live stream record gives you the ability to record either all or selected streams. That's one of the cool aspects of it. So maybe you don't want to record every rendition. Maybe you just want that 1080p or 4K stream that's coming in. You can configure that using this module. It's very powerful. I've set this up in the past for users of Wowza who have a lot of IP cameras. In fact, I was working with a very large professional baseball team, and they wanted to have a camera on each one of the positions on the field, but they were struggling with how to manage all of these recordings coming in. So we set them up with the live stream auto record, and we not only were able to record the streams they wanted, but at the same time, and you can see it in the slide in front of you, it says it can include regular expressions. We're actually able to modify naming conventions, time, date, stamp, those sort of bits, because you'll notice in Wowza Engine, while there is the ability to record all streams, there's also a very powerful component in Wowza called it's called several things. I end up calling it live stream record, but it's actually a recording capability in Wowza where you can use the REST API. So you can send a command to Wowza that says start recording, stop recording. You can do that from the Wowza Streaming Engine Manager, the web page that controls the software. But at the same time, while you're doing that, you can choose where the file's saved, what the file's named as, what the bits are inside the name, like the hour, the minute, the second. There's a lot of information that you can put into the file when it creates what we call a recorder. Well, this module automates that. It's preset. So you go in, you set up the module, you determine what properties you need to put in there to make your file look a certain way, record certain streams that match a certain name criteria. So if you're struggling a little bit, if your hard drive is filling up, your content folder is getting too big because you're just recording everything in the kitchen sink, consider this module. It's not difficult to set up, very well documented, and it can definitely add some efficiency to your recording workflow.
And yeah, Tim, one other thing I'd just add onto that as well is the default record all streams option with that tick box in the manager UI. That doesn't give you any control over the naming convention. If you want to split the recordings maybe every hour, it doesn't give you any control over anything with the recording apart from it's going to record everything that comes in. So again, if you've got that option set, then as soon as the stream starts, it's going to start recording. Once it ends, it's going to stop recording. If the encoder restarts, it's going to either append or version or overwrite the original recording. Live stream, the live stream auto record module basically automates it so you can record all the incoming streams, or maybe like Tim said, you just want to record your transcoder outputs, or you just want to record your transcoder sources. Then you can do it with that as well. The other thing I would add to it is Tim mentioned that you can go into the REST API and you can configure the streams to start recording there. The problem with the REST API is you can't actually start a recording until the live stream is running. So you're possibly going to miss the first few seconds or minutes of the live stream. Whereas this one here will allow you to capture everything in the live stream. And the live stream, once auto recorders started the stream, the recording is available through the REST API. So if you want to make some modifications to a specific recording while it's running, maybe you want to split it, maybe you want to stop the recording because you don't need it anymore, then you can still do that through the REST API and through the Manager UI.
Thank you, Roger.
That's fine.
So the next module I want to talk about is the Stream Publisher. If there aren't any questions on live stream auto record, looks like there aren't. So I'm going to tell you, this is one of my favorite modules because you can take a really cool MP4 file and use it as a demo source. So that's one of my favorite reasons to use it. But in a practical sense, you can play pre-recorded content as if it was live. And a case in point, during the pandemic, there was a huge transition to streaming video. And there were a lot of people producing events that needed that capability to say push to Facebook Live or YouTube Live, but they didn't want it to say premiere. That has a consumer look to it. If you're a marquee event producer, you want your content to look live. And what Wowza Streaming Engine can do using the Stream Publisher is take a produced MP4 file, something that maybe has been worked over by a video editor and a director, and it's just this wonderful asset. You can give Wowza Streaming Engine access to that file. It can be either mounted on a network storage or it can be on the hard drive. And Wowza, at a specific time on a specific date, will pick up that file and stream it as if it's coming from a hardware encoder, for example. And what that gives you is a live stream from an MP4 file. And there's a lot of elaborate scheduling that you can add to that. You can have multiple files streaming to multiple streams at the same time. So that, you can do sections of the file. For example, you can say from 5 seconds to 236 seconds. I want you to play this section of it. So there's somewhat of a mark in, mark out approach to this, but it gives you the ability to use all of the capabilities of Wowza Streaming Engine, including the transcoder, including DVR, including the stream target capability. So an organization can set up a very modest instance of Wowza in a cloud environment. And we also have the ability to do this in our managed service with Wowza Streaming Cloud. But you can take a very simple server. It doesn't take a lot of horsepower if you're not using the transcoder. And you can go live into these services and the viewers have that as if it's happening right now experience. So to me, from my perspective, that's one of the most powerful capabilities that the Stream Publisher has the ability to do. It also is used as a foundation for a lot of customization we do in our professional services organization for our customers. There are all sorts of business reasons. For example, it can also support a mid-roll. So if a video gaps, for example, you have a live stream coming in, it's actually an integration with another module called Loop Until Live, but Stream Publisher is providing that, say a sizzle reel, say a technical difficulties stream. If a live stream shuts off, it can switch over to the Stream Publisher, to this playlist. And then it's a continuous experience if properly set up for the person viewing it. So I'm watching somebody on a mobile device, maybe out in a tactical situation with EMS or police or fire or whatever. And all of a sudden the LTE goes down for 5 seconds. You can put a "we'll be right back" in the playlist, and then they reconnect and all of a sudden you're back live again. So I'm getting a little bit out in the examples, but it is a very, very powerful tool. If anyone here listening is a Wowza media server or Wowza Streaming Engine administrator, strongly recommend you get to know this configuration because it's extremely powerful. And one thing that is important to note is there are REST API capabilities to manipulate this module. So for example, you can start and update the playlist dynamically without having to restart the application. I mentioned a little bit about gaps between the playlist. We can have it shut down the stream when the asset ends and then restart it when the next one starts. As I mentioned, it is a foundational module to a lot of different ways to configure Wowza Streaming Engine. But if you do get involved with if you have a really hard question, you have a really difficult case, and you feel like you're going to need some type of supplemental or, VOD to live or file to live capability, get in front of our professional services organization, particularly can route you to someone like Roger, who's on with us today. And we can customize this module and do some really interesting things with it. So I really am being emphatic. Get to know the Stream Publisher module. It's extremely popular. And I think it's one of the most powerful modules we have.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
In support, we see this a lot, especially with online TV stations. They're always daily updating these things, and even enterprise is setting up their internal network, how they do the internal TVs and stuff, or even for their work at home folks. So it's really powerful. And I will say this, from a support standpoint, we use this a lot too, as a good audio, video, or playback source, so that we're pulling something in clean as we're doing repros and stuff. So it's a very handy tool all around yeah.
Absolutely. I'm thinking of a very, very large government organization. It's a correctional institution, and we have to be discreet and not say people by name. But I know they have 35 sites, and each site has 2 Wowza servers running in it. And they're full-time people who a huge part of their job is scheduling the Stream Publisher. And for each one of these facilities, they have a 24/7 television schedule that's constantly running from a lonely Wowza Streaming Engine running in a rack somewhere. So, while that may be the longhand way of approaching it, it's kind of fun to think, Mac, and you made me think of that because of the TV station use case. It can absolutely be used to create, a TV station like experience. And in fact, I think one of our colleagues, Rose Power, she did a video on that. It's probably on our YouTube channel, highlighting exactly that capability. So yeah, very cool.
Very versatile.
Yeah, there's just one thing I'd just drop in there, Tim. Some of the capability or some of the examples or capabilities you just alluded to are actually what we can provide in the like a Proserve engagement type thing. With the version of the Stream Publisher, which is available on our public pages, basically, as you can see, it is controlled through a SMIL file. So one of the shortcomings with it is that if you do need to update it, you have to update that SMIL file and restart all the streams in there. And I think what you just alluded to there with the 24/7 TV channel, that's basically what they do. So every 24 hours, they're going in, they're creating a new SMIL file with that day's listings in it. So what we can do within the Proserve, and what we have done for some customers, is actually created a new version of the module with a REST API endpoint, and that allows a customer to go in there and update the playlist on the fly without having to restart the streams and everything like that. It allows the streams to it's got more advanced scheduling than what we've got in the current one. So the current one basically allows you to specify a start time for each playlist. The version through the Proserve can allow you to basically schedule a start and a stop for each stream. It can also allow, if a server gets interrupted and restarts, it'll restart the stream from the exact point where it's supposed to be based on the original schedule time. Whereas this one here will basically go through and find the closest start point and start from there. And the other advantage that we can fix is that if there's gaps in between the playlist, then we can shut down the stream in between them. So it would basically allow you to maybe have a rolling playlist that every day at 5 p.m. you're going to start a stream and run it for an hour and then shut it down. And then the following day, you'll start a new one.
Yeah, Roger, for those of us who've used the publishing module for a long time, that is a dramatic leap forward to have that capability. I do understand.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I do understand. Go ahead.
I did one for using the new one a couple of months back for a company. They were doing a they were doing basically a presentation over 2 days where they had a what was it, a live, it was supposed to look like a live presentation, but because of the times we're in, they couldn't actually host their live presentation. So everything was pre-recorded. And there was a 2-hour session initially with a mid-roll in the middle of it. And then there was a half-hour break and then another 2-hour session. And then the second session was actually then repeated the following day for customers in a different time zone. So basically what we did is use the new scheduler features in the Proserve version of this to be able to go through and schedule all those streams. The other thing that they had in there is they actually had 13 different audio languages. So we're actually, the whole playlist, I think, was about 2,000 lines long by the time we'd created it through the REST API. But you imagine if you try and do that in XML and you make a mistake, you've got to restart it. You've got to basically restart all those streams, whereas this allowed us to basically go through, create the playlist, and then if there was any changes we need to make, we could make them on the fly.
We've got a couple questions regarding this module. Michael's back has a good question. He says, does Transcoder and/or Stream Publisher support the preservation of embedded broadcasts, SCSI 35 and 104 markers? You guys know off the top of your head?
So basically how we deal with those markers is they're coming in on an RTSP stream to start with. Now, one thing to be aware with Wowza is even though you've got an RTSP stream coming in and you may have an RTSP output going out, it's not the same stream. We pull the stream apart on the way in and into our own internal format. And then when we create we create probably the HLS or the MPEG-TS output. It's a completely different stream. So those, even though we do have the SCSI 35 markers on the ingest, what we do is we convert them to AMF data internally, and they're passed through the system as AMF data. And the HLS outputs, we can then convert them or put them into an HLS playlist for splice, add markers in the HLS. But to answer the question, they don't get passed through as the original data. They get passed through in our own data format.
Cool. Good. Michael, hopefully that answers your question. Clay has something to MBC his question.
Yeah, I do see. Clay's asking about Proserve Only. And to answer frankly, yes, the capabilities Roger is referring to at this stage of the game does require some Java configuration and some things that we don't have necessarily available for free download on our support site. That being said, I wouldn't discourage approaching Wowza and asking for some of these capabilities. We really are eager to hear what you're needing to do beyond the off-the-shelf stream publisher capability. So yeah, at present, these are Proserve only capabilities, but bear in mind as well, we're making sure that you get this thing installed correctly and it's tested properly. At some point, they may end up in a later version of Wowza Streaming Engine, but right now it's certainly available through our professional services organization. And by the way, many of these functions are available with Wowza Streaming Cloud, which is a fully managed platform. You don't have to own a server, rent a server, deal with software licensing. So there are a lot of options that we have, quote unquote, under the hood through our Proserve organization that we're not necessarily supporting for general availability.
And probably one other thing to add there, Tim, is generally if a customer comes along and wants to use something which they're not quite sure how to use it, and we can come up with a solution where we can use the modules that are in the public domain, then we'll push them towards that. We're not going to go out and say that you need to create a custom implementation if there's already something there to do it. An example might be, say, again, using the stream publisher. You might only have 2 streams that you need to work with, 1 or 2 streams you need to work with. They just need to run a specific time, or they just need to loop around and then there's no point using the paid version of the module when the free version will do the job.
Yeah, absolutely. One statement I want to make, and I share this with folks in pre-sales all the time. You know, Wowza exists. We are in business to sell streaming services and software. We happen to have a very capable professional services organization, but our goal is to provide you the best value and the best route to you having that streaming solution that works for you. So by no means, you know, are we intending to, you know, gouge you guys for professional services. It's just we know all of these capabilities that are available at the Java code level, at advanced module level. So we have that ability to really dig in deep on your behalf and make things work. But Roger, I'm so glad you said that. If there's a way to do it with an existing module today, we'll send you that route, because we want you to be successful. That's our goal.
Cool.
You guys are sending over the questions on your own, which you're welcome to do. But I can reiterate them too, which Clay Lambert has the question that it seems like Roger and Tim are referring to Proserve Only, but he continued on saying, in this age of Zoom, fusion of multiple services, it would be pretty handy to have access to every possible fidgety bit. Is that possible to do for them?
Tim?
Well, you know, we have a tremendous developer community. So it's not that the API isn't there. It's absolutely there and fully documented. So ultimately, you do have access to all of these capabilities. It's the experience that we have in configuring these components. So I could see how, Clay, you would think, oh, I don't have access to it. Really, it's a learning curve. Understanding all of the aspects of Wowza that can be manipulated to pull off some of these really cool things that we're talking about here in this webinar. So, you know, I understand the question, but really, you know, it's extremely difficult to bridge the gap between having the know-how and then being able to, in a very appropriate way, in a digestible way, get support documentation and content. It's just exhaustive. So there is a level of expertise that our professional services engineers have that they're able to share, but we're not practically able to put every single little bit out there, every little tip. We try really hard. We do videos, we do webinars, we have blogs that we do. We really want to get this information out there, but there is just a certain experience level that we have that that we would love you to leverage. So we're using tools that are freely available to you in most cases, the Java API, the REST API, the Wowza Streaming Engine component itself. It goes on and on. But I think the know-how through the professional services organization can change, 5 months of iterating to 5 days or 5 hours.
And I think one of the points that you were having with that was these are made by our community. Not all of them were made by us, and we can't really support something that somebody else created. So it'd be a tedious process in itself.
Right.
Looks like we got most of the questions answered here. I think we can move forward. Just to answer Clay, he was asking why the Q&A section is disabled. That's just because people kept not putting the questions in the chat. You're asking about disabled chat, and they were not putting them. They were putting questions in the chat, and that became tedious. So we don't need to discuss that. Sorry, guys. I think we're moving past Stream Publisher module now to the HLS Stream Targets module.
Yeah, this is a good one.
Yeah. So so basically all the previous modules that we've talked about, they're all basically prepackaged, ready to go examples. You can put them into your Wowza Streaming Engine, adjust the configuration on them, and use them, and get, or I'd say basically production ready results for a small system. Basically, what this one here does is, or the HLS Stream Targets, is an example how to create an HLS output stream, or create an HLS output stream and send it to basically maybe your own web server, or send it to a folder on your hard drive, which is then got a web server attached to it. the other things you could do with it is maybe send it to cloud storage and then have it play back through cloud storage. So basically what we've got within Wowza Streaming Engine is a feature called Stream Targets, which allows you to do that. You can send an HLS stream to Akamai, or you can send it to Google Cloud or S3 or something like that. And you can within Stream Targets, we can also send RTMP and RTSP and that sort of thing. So what this example here does is basically provides it's two examples. One to be able to send to an HTTP endpoint, so a web server which is enabled to accept post or put requests, and then the other option is to write the HLS directly to storage, and that storage might be a local folder on the server which has a Apache server attached to it, or it may be a network attached storage or whatever, which is maybe attached to a separate web server or something like that. So yeah, these two here are basically just example modules that that you can use as a starting point if you want to create your own stream target endpoints.
Cool. Now, not giving away anything major, but I mean, this is something that we find has been very handy, very critical to our Fastly workflow in Wowza Streaming Cloud. For two reasons. One, that it's what allows us to provide live to VOD playback for our customers, and also the actual after the event VOD URL as well. So that's been very handy. And then we during a live event, if you don't have VOD turned on or whatever, we still use this to push to storage for Fastly to retrieve. So it can be multiple. It can be very you can do one thing and have multiple outcomes. For example, pushing your chunks to storage. So we utilize this very heavily in that particular product. You guys have any examples of any others that have actually used this? Maybe through Proserve or
yeah, no, I've had like when I was in support, we had one of the groups, or one of the companies who we're dealing with, they'd actually taken these modules as a starting point and then turned and added the Amazon AWS or S3 API to it. So they're basically using it to push to AWS or to S3, and then they're then using CloudFront, I think, to be able to play it back. Like you say, for VOD storage, I've done one with a company a few months back where basically we're using the same sort of module to create a HLS VOD stream for their own use case. So they're basically using this module, pushing the HLS chunks to storage as they've been created. And a lot of people also using it as a replacement for NDVR. The problem with live HLS on the server is that you're limited on what you can store in memory. The problem with the DVR, and I'll be the first to admit it, it was created 15 odd years ago when we had 4 or 5 different HTTP playback types, and each of those needed to support a DVR workflow. So when we created it, basically we had to make DVR work with all 4 or 5 with all of those different HTTP outputs, and it worked well with some of them. It didn't work well with some of the others. So things like MPEG- or HLS, when you try and do adaptive bitrate streaming and one of your sources goes down, DVR sometimes can't handle it very well. Whereas you can create an HLS stream target, and because you're not limited on the amount of memory, you can say, okay, I want to have 2 hours worth of segments in the stream target. And so what we're doing is we're pushing segments up to storage, when we get to the 2-hour point, we start deleting the segments from the storage as well. So it basically gives you a DVR type workflow, but the playback is running through the stream target stream instead of the DVR on server.
Interesting. No, it's good. Yeah, we've seen that recently as well. The advantage obviously is you're not doing double the work, right? When you're doing DVR and outputting the chunks. So
yeah,
that's good. Streamlines a little
and
bit.
also too from a use case point of view, and I think there's a reason we're doing it in Fastly as well, or in Wowza Cloud with Fastly, is if you're using, say, CloudFront connecting directly to your server, for example, CloudFront has got a lot of edge servers out in the wild, and if your stream is global, then you're going to have CloudFront edge servers from all over the place connecting to your Wowza server, pulling the stream. If you turn around and make a stream target workflow, then you can point CloudFront, say, to Amazon S3 or something like that. So you're basically putting a proxy in between your Wowza server and the CDN.
Yeah,
which is basically exactly how we're doing it with Fastly. We're pushing to storage, and then Fastly's pulling from that storage. So they're not having to pull from all over the place from that one Wowza server.
Right.
So Roger, would that be like origin protection or origin shielding? That
yeah,
approach?
Pretty much it would be the same sort of thing. You've got no amount of load on your Wowza server when you're running a stream target compared to when you've got a CDN just pulling from, like even using HTTP origin mode. It only looks like you got one connection, but under the hood you've actually got possibly got hundreds of connections hitting that same stream.
Would you consider it a good practice if you're using a cloud hosting provider to store inside of a blob storage solution like this? As a general rule, is it a good idea if you're using a pull CDN?
It's definitely a good option. Again, especially if you're using, CloudFront with AWS, they're both on the same platform. So CloudFront is going to probably get better latency and better throughput pulling from S3 than it's going to get pulling from a Wowza server somewhere. Even if that Wowza server is on EC2, that's probably going to get better throughput. And the main advantage is you're not going to have a load of traffic hitting your server directly.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, sorry, guys. We only got a few more minutes left of this webinar, so I'm just going to push us a little forward here. So I'm going to put all of these on the screen, and maybe Mac, you can talk about them.
They have fancy bullets. Yeah. So we are in a rush. Hey, so I want to talk quickly just about support overview. It's been Tim's point, and during 2020 and into 2021, there's been some evolution of streaming requirements based on people's availability and distancing and all of that. And so, as we've come into a new era, one of the things I just wanted to kind of point out is with support, as we're talking about customization, we're talking about modules and all of that. With support, our priority is break fix issues. When you're down, we want to get you back up as quickly as possible. That's number one, because if you're down and your business depends on that, if there's money involved, that's important. That's important to you. It's important to us. So that's our number one priority as we speak about that. So as some of these developer related questions come in, as some of these deeper code questions come in, I assure you that my team will go as far as they can with you. But at the end of the day, we are not developers, and so we will assist as far as we can, and to move you forward in that. Now, with that said, when we get you as far as we can in the Midwest where I live, we say as I get you to the edge, to the fence of my pasture, I want to get you into the next one where they're smarter than us, where they can do more for you, where they can get you where you need to be, where they can provide you a solution or guide you. That would be professional services. And so I want to make it very clear that we will take you as far as we can to make you as successful as we can. until we run out of runway. And then we'll send you on to the professionals who can guide you. To Tim's point, it's really not a commercial for, but I want you all to know, as a business, we have evolved. We didn't really have professional services 3 years ago. We were thinking about it, and we were edging into that, but we're there now, and we see great success because of that. As far as what my team can do for you, we're here 24/7, 365 for premium support customers. And I just wanted to put out a couple stats out there that if you are in a place where you want quicker, faster access to my team, the advantages of Platinum Severity 1, our agreed SLA is 30 minutes. My team is averaging 11 minutes since its inception of premium support. And then with Gold Severity 1s, it's a 2-hour SLA, and my team's hitting those in 45 minutes. So we are here, we are attentive. We want to see you succeed. And with that, just understand sort of the delineation between what my team can do and what professional services can do. And so with that, on the next slide, we have some information about professional services, just so you understand what can take place and how it can be a partner with you in what's going forward. I don't remember who was speaking to this slide.
I'll take it.
Cool.
So our professional services offering is a paid service, but I want to just state up front that we have designed some, we call them quick start packages. So we no longer have to just hand somebody a quick start guide and say, go install it on your server. You may find it very, very affordable to have a Wowza Proserve engineer come in and help you with your installation, initial setup, getting RTSP sources going, getting your recording going. That can be done in a short time frame, and we have packages that do that. So as we have talked about Proserve during this particular webinar, we've talked about some pretty custom applications, particularly with regarding to scheduling and even the stream target module that Roger just talked about. So the intent with professional services is to listen, to provide you with open and shut cases if it applies. So you don't want to have to task your dev team or your IT team in building out an initial deployment of Wowza, but we also have the ability to take on very exciting large projects. So our intent is to listen, to consult, to give you very tangible black and white business plans, project plans, and going forward. And what we really love doing, quite honestly, is building cool stuff. And that's what we're most proud of. Some of the Department of Transportation workflows that we've done, some that we've done for military, many that we've done for enterprise. It's really fun to put a big project together and build something cool with Wowza. And that's really what we're all about. But bear in mind, we're here to help you. And if our support people aren't able to invest the time necessary in a support case, you have an entire organization at your service that we can take on virtually any challenge you put in front of us.
Right. And before Justin pushes us off, I just want to say, I do want to say, when professional services completes a project or does some sort of deployment or whatever they're doing, what is amazing is my team also gets a handoff. We understand what they've done for you. We understand what your workflow is, what your configuration is. So we're aware of what's happened, and you'll see more longevity, sustainability, and stability in your deployment, rather than having headaches and extended time frames and all that stuff. So there's benefit there. But yeah, we're on the last slide, and so Justin's ready to do the spiel.
Yes. I don't have a spiel. If anybody does have questions, though, unfortunately, I think we've hit the limit here. If anybody wants to toss one or two in right now, I guess we can extend this for a few more seconds.
Please.
But I do want to appreciate Matt, you joining us, as well as you, Tim, and you, Roger. Thank you for all that information. I think it's a lot of great information there, and certainly people who do need help, here is the places you can contact us, or contact technical support, or talk to professional services. So again, I want to thank everybody for joining us on this webinar, and I hope you do all have a great evening. All right.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Appreciate
Bye-bye.
it, everybody.
Thank you.